So USC's in a free fall right now. Chaos, disaster, utter mess, grease fire, uncontained, everyone's leaving. Nobody wants to play for Lincoln Riley. Okay, a couple of thoughts here. It is a sizable discrepancy to have had 18 players, several of whom were impact players for USC this season, hit the transfer portal. They've brought in one guy, a corner from San Jose State. Do you think that number is going to remain? Okay, I'll get to that because I'll address all the concerns that you have first before I offer a glimmer of hope to Trojan fans. Again, maybe I should stop doing that. It didn't go well for USC before the season, but alas, here we are once more. 17 net players have left the program. That's not a great sign. USC just had a 6-6 season. They should have been better. They were close, but they felt like Nebraska. They just couldn't win the one possession games. They couldn't make the plays. They weren't good enough in the trenches across the board. Offensive line, defensive line wasn't good enough. Michigan, Washington won those games by pushing them around in key moments. That was the difference between USC going over their preseason win total of 7.5, which I thought they would do, and where they ended up at 6-6. Quite literally, 2 plays. 2 plays, 2 wins. How long has Nebraska been saying that? Until this year, since 2016. So USC has a horrible third year under Lincoln Riley. They regress again, and it doesn't feel good. Nothing about USC feels positive or optimistic. Miller Moss is off to Louisville, and I think he can do very well over there. And he should not have been in that position. Because all the evidence that we had was that Lincoln Riley, with any quarterback, is going to succeed. Nope, not the case. For some reason, it didn't work out, and I don't think it's a lack of talent with Miller Moss. Things just really started to spiral. The most underrated struggle for USC in the last couple of years is not that they can't stop the run, it's that they don't have a good offensive line. Go watch that Michigan game back. Their offensive line was terrible. Why did Miller Moss throw a pick 6 trying to get rid of the ball quickly? Number 1, Michigan disguises the defense well. Will Johnson's a great player. That's reason number 2. And reason number 3, Miller Moss knows he's not going to have any time to throw the football. So there's a long way to go for USC to get back to where they were a couple of years ago. I don't think they need a Heisman Trophy winner at quarterback to succeed. I know that's when Lincoln Riley's teams, whether at Oklahoma or USC, have been at their best when he has a Heisman finalist. When he doesn't, it hasn't gone quite as well. I don't think this is a guy who's forgotten how to call offensive plays. I think this is a guy who has forgotten how to build in the trenches, at least on one side of the ball. The unsung heroes, as they often are, from those Oklahoma teams were the offensive lines. Because, yeah, Kyler Murray and Jalen Hurts could run around. Baker Mayfield wasn't running around a ton. And that's an Oklahoma team that went to double overtime with Georgia in the Rose Bowl, or else they go to the national championship if they find a way to win that game. So that's the biggest problem that USC has. When you contrast that against the net 17 departed players, we're not even to December 20th yet. Yes, it has a feel of the sky is falling, everything is wrong, and what in the world are they going to do? So that's the negative, which is very real. Let me turn to the positive, or at least an optimistic view of what USC can be here. Because they haven't just lost a couple of guys. Yeah, Bear Alexander is in the transfer portal. But again, how good was USC along the defensive line? Duce Robinson, wide receiver portal. Kyron Hudson, wide receiver. He transfers to Penn State. That's a nice pickup for the Nittany Lions, who will have Drew Aller back next season. Zachariah Branch, his brother Zion Branch, transfer portal as well. Zachariah Branch was a big-time recruit for USC. There have been a lot of big-time recruits that have just not quite panned out on the offensive side of the ball. And then you couple the fact that Raleek Brown is out there on Twitter saying, smart move, when one of his teammates enters the portal. And Jacoby Lane saying, dude, what the heck is going on Twitter? It's just chaos everywhere you look. Number 1, USC has brought, again, we're flipping to the positive here. All the negative is out there. You understand why people have a negative perception of the program right now. It's very well earned. But number 1 positive, they are not going to be the same team they were this year. So everything goes wrong for USC this season. They end up benching their quarterback. You can think that was right or wrong. He threw 9 picks in 9 games. I never felt like he was the primary issue. Jaden Mayava did some really, really nice stuff for USC offensively, but he also threw a couple of interceptions against Notre Dame. Lo and behold, starts up front. But all these other guys leave, and you say, well, there's a culture problem at USC. Well, okay. So then what's the problem with a bunch of guys leaving? USC wasn't any good, and all their guys are leaving. Could that be addition by subtraction? Could be. Could be for USC. It depends on what happens next. Because now they go into the transfer portal, and it's open for them just like it's open for everybody else. They've got a quarter from San Jose State. Maybe he'll start, maybe he won't. Is that the only guy they're going to bring in via the portal? Is that the only guy who is going to be a starter in 2025 that wasn't a starter on this year's team? No. It's going to be a very different looking team. And yes, a lot of change can be scary and frightening. And you know what? It's understandable if you are scared or frightened about this relationship between USC football and Lincoln Riley. That buyout is really expensive. These two sides are hitched together, at least for the next couple of years. He has to find a way to make it work. But all the skill position guys that are leaving, yes, there's some real talent out there. Duce Robinson, 6'6", came out as a tight end, is basically a wide receiver at this point. I mean, really talented guy. Kyron Hudson, talented guy, wide receiver. Zachariah Branch, immense potential. Saw that more in his freshman season, it felt, than this year. He did have more receiving yards in his sophomore season, but that's not where USC's focus has to be. It is not where there has to be. Now, then you run into, well, a coach from their defensive staff was pulled to be the head coach of Fresno State. Their offensive coordinator and offensive line coach, Lincoln Riley's really the offensive coordinator, he's been pulled away elsewhere as well. So nothing is going right. But didn't this feel like a program that needed a reset? Shouldn't 6-6 be bottoming out? I know we saw Clay Helton go 4-8 at USC. That was the bottom of the bottom. Lincoln Riley hasn't apparently hit rock bottom for USC, but he's darn close to it for what this program expects to be. So you have wholesale changes. Maybe that's a good thing. Danton Lin, the defensive coordinator, he was good. You watch USC's defense this year significantly improve. But the next step for the Trojans is to go build a roster both through high school recruiting and through the portal that is good enough to compete with the best teams in the Big Ten. They didn't have that this year. They were not good enough. They couldn't even beat Michigan. Yes, they were on the road. I know Michigan was ranked at the time, but we saw what they were throughout the course of the season. They were a one-dimensional team, and it came down to one play, and you weren't good enough to stop them on that one particular play. And then they lost to Maryland. Then they lost to Minnesota, and then they blew a lead against Penn State at home. It was one thing after another. Didn't this feel like a team that needed a reset? That's the opportunity they've got now. You can reset a lot of things about that locker room. You can reset a lot of different position groups. I don't believe this is a quick fix. Building an offensive line, it doesn't happen quickly. There's no team in college football that builds an offensive line overnight in the transfer portal. Colorado's tried 2 years in a row. They are 0 for 2. You can build a defensive line, cannot build an offensive line that quickly. That is where Lincoln Riley needs to put his focus. Trust that his offense will allow the quarterbacks and receivers to succeed enough, and the running backs too, but that none of them can reach their full potential if you don't start up front. So this is an opportunity for Lincoln Riley to just take a step forward. That's all USC should be looking for. Crazy thing to say about Lincoln Riley in year 4, but that's where we're at.